Welcome to Mid-Level Adventurers, a podcast where non-experts talk about the things they love. I'm Jarrod, and with me for the series is my co-host, Matt Morris.
Hello everyone, it's Matt Morris.
Dungeons & Dragons is a game where players must face danger, death, and monsters as they quest to achieve their ends. One of the most notable monsters in D&D is the eponymous dragon.
Oh yeah.
In an earlier episode of this podcast, we talked about monsters, and during that discussion, we briefly discussed dragons. Today, Matt and I are going to have an in-depth chat about dragons. Are they all the same? What do they want? Where do they come from? And how do they influence the world of D&D? Join us as we adventure deep into the dragon's lair this week. So Matt, right off the bat, dragons are the best. I think we can both agree.
Yeah, I agree.
But where do they come from? What is their origin in D&D? And what real-world cultures have been pulled from? And how has the real world influenced them?
Well, you see, when a mommy dragon and a daddy dragon like each other... No, I'm just kidding. No, that's a very good question, because I found in my research that there are a few different origin stories, and it would probably take a fair amount of time to explain them all in depth. So I'm curious to see how, what we found, how it differs. I actually think that this is kind of intentional, in the writing. They're called myths, a lot of these stories, right? And the vagueness probably only makes it more interesting and perhaps open to interpretation. But anyway, one of the stories that I found is that dragons were introduced to the world in the form of devastating meteors that struck the planet.
Oh.
Yeah, the meteors, well, they weren't actually meteors, they were dragon eggs. And the aftermath of the devastation, the eggs hatched and, well, dragons sprang out. This event is sometimes called the Sundering or the Tearfall, depending on kind of where the myth is coming from. And from everything I found, it took place during a war way long time ago between the gods and the primordials.
Ah.
So I'm curious, did you find anything close to that, or did you have a different story?
I did find something that I think is close or based off of that. The myth that I located was that the two main dragon gods in D&D, Bahamut and Tiamat, were created by the supreme overgod named Io.
Yeah.
And sometimes Bahamut and Tiamat are said to be brother and sister. Sometimes they are said to have been designed to have been mates, but by their very nature they became the most intense of enemies. Because you have Bahamut, the platinum dragon, who is viewed by dragons as the creator of all metallic dragons, and is generally a good aligned deity. He is beneficent and loyal and all those good things. And then there's Tiamat, the evil five-headed dragon queen and goddess of the chromatic dragons, who are usually evil. And she is very, very evil and very, very cruel. So the two of them together wasn't ever really going to happen. But each of them did create children on their own, in their own ways. Tiamat creating the 5 chromatic dragons, red, black, blue, green, and white. And Bahamut giving life to the metallic dragons, brass, bronze, copper, gold, and silver.
I believe I've read somewhere, too, that Io is sometimes referenced as the oldest of the dragon gods, or perhaps the, ultimate or highest level dragon god, and then it's splitting into Bahamut and Tiamat being, I don't want to call them lesser gods, but, they branched off Io. So, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there is a version of the story where Io was torn in two by some ancient primordial, and the two halves of Io are what actually became Bahamut and Tiamat, those two physical halves, and then his spiritual energy continued on as Io.
Right. As you can see, there are several different versions with similar overlap. I would encourage anyone that wants to learn more to kind of do some research on your own. You'd probably be surprised what you'll find.
Oh yeah, definitely. There are as many dragon myths in D&D as there are in our real world.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Dragons have been permeating the cultural zeitgeist of the entire world since time immemorial. Dragons have been referenced in biblical texts with St. George, I believe.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Ancient folklore, myth from all over the world. Cadmus, I believe, sowed dragon teeth that then popped into existence as new warriors to create an army.
Oh, yeah.
Since perhaps one of the most common images in Western folktales is that armored knight going forth to slay the fire-breathing dragon, I don't think we should be surprised at all that Gygax and Arneson incorporated them into this fantasy tabletop game.
Yeah.
However, Western mythology is not the only one that was utilized. Chinese dragon lore is actually the inspiration for the good dragons, the metallic dragons, and even some non-true dragons such as the dragon turtle.
Oh, okay. I do super appreciate that they used both just a wide variety of cultural and historical influences for the dragon. And it's not just the classic, as we think of it, medieval knight fighting the dragon. Yeah, because there's a lot to pull from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, Tiamat is actually named in honor of the Babylonian goddess who was also known as the Mother of Dragons.
Oh, no kidding. Not to be confused with Game of Thrones.
Oh, no Khaleesi's here.
Yeah, different mother.
Yeah. But since Gygax and Arneson were so heavily inspired by Tolkien and his writing, Smaug from The Hobbit absolutely had influence in D&D. You can see it all across the board.
Oh, yeah.
But it should also be noticed that different settings do handle dragons very differently. As we talked about, there are different origin stories depending on what setting in the D&D universe you are looking at, or multiverse, I should say.
Yeah.
In Dark Sun, the only dragon is a sorcerer king, who is just a human, but the title that he has chosen is dragon.
Okay.
In Eberron, there were 3 dragon gods who created the world itself, with 2 of them battling the third and imprisoning it within the depths of the planet. One of the remaining 2 ultimately became the sky, and the third dragon, named Eberron, merged with and became part of the planet itself.
Very cool.
And the dragons on Eberron exist separate from other societies on their own continent and view themselves above other races. But something particularly unique is that there is no rule of alignment based on type.
Oh, that is interesting.
But we're throwing a lot of words around here. Metallic, chromatic, dragon types. Dragons are so unique that they are considered their own creature type in D&D. But what kind of dragons are there, and how do they work in the game? What abilities do they have? Are they all the same? Are they different? What do you think?
Oh, very different. Very, very different. And you already threw out some examples to kind of, just give people a taste of that. I think when we think of dragons, the big dragons, we're actually talking about true dragons.
Yeah, exactly.
True dragons are divided into 2 categories, like you mentioned. Chromatic, which are generally evil, and metallic, which are generally good. Just a refresher, the chromatic dragons are the red, black, blue, green, and white. Metallic are gold, silver, bronze, copper, and brass. I mean, right off the bat, a big distinction would be their breath powers. For instance, red dragons breathe fire. Silver breathe a freezing cold. But there's so much more than that, isn't there? I mean, that's just like kind of tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and not only that, but metallic dragons have 2 breath weapon options in general.
Which is very cool.
Yes, they have a damaging breath weapon and what I would call a neutralizing breath weapon. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
It's also important probably to point out that true dragons, there are some pretty big distinctions as they age.
That is correct.
Yeah, so they not only does their power increase, but their abilities change slightly. In general, they just become scarier and more powerful the older they get.
Yeah, when you start your life as a dragon, let's say you hatch out of your egg, you have what is called genetic memory, which means you pretty much know everything that those dragons who came before you knew. You get that information. So you're already pretty smart.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, when you are a wormling between 0 and 5 years old, you have a nasty bite attack, and you can already use your breath weapon. Now, as a dragon ages up and becomes a young dragon, which is around 6 to 100 years of age, they gain a claw attack. And after that, after they reach 101, to about 800 years or so, they are an adult dragon. And this is where things get really interesting, because they don't only get a tail attack, they also get legendary resistances, legendary actions, and frightful presence.
This is when they start to get, really scary, really powerful. I mean, they're already strong.
Mm-hmm. The typical legendary resistance means that the dragon can just choose to succeed on a saving throw that it failed 3 times a day.
That's pretty huge.
And for legendary actions, what that means is that at the end of another creature's turn, they can just take an action, and they have 3 options to choose from. So during initiative order, as long as they have actions left, they can either 1, make a perception check to see if they notice anything crazy going on around them. They can make a tail attack, or they can make a wing attack, which allows it to not only buffet all those creatures around it within a radius, but allow it to fly up to half its speed away without provoking opportunity attacks.
That's kind of huge, too, not getting any opportunity attacks as it flies away.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. When a dragon reaches 801 years old, it has reached the epoch of its life cycle and become an ancient dragon. Now, what does this mean, right? Let's start with the chromatics. So you've got your red dragon wormling. What they get is a 15-foot cone for a breath weapon. As they age up, the range of the breath increases and the damage increases. As an ancient red dragon, they can affect a 90-foot cone with 26 d6 fire damage.
That's huge. That's some damage, and that's a big area, too.
Oh, yeah.
I think I did some basic math on that, trying to average what that was, and it came out to be somewhere in the 80s to pushing 100 damage. I mean,
yeah,
that's like insta-kill.
This is why red dragons are so terrifying.
Right. They are top of the food chain on the chromatic list, aren't they?
They are. They are considered the most powerful. One of the most important things to remember about the red dragon is that they are avaricious. They are arrogant. They are greedy. They are vain. They are evil. They love gold and treasure and monetary value and can size up an item's worth at a glance. They know every single item in its hoard down to the last coin. They hate and kill any other dragon, especially silver and copper dragons. The only one that they might allow through their area is a white dragon because they view them as bestial and beneath killing.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, they're like egotistical, so, that's how that goes.
I can kind of see some of where they must have got some inspiration from Smaug, perhaps from Tolkien's The Hobbit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the red dragon is the Smaug child, if you will.
Yeah.
But let's talk about something else that all ancient and adult dragons get. Let's talk about what is frightful presence.
That's a good question. I'm going to assume it means that they can scare you in some way just because they're so frightening and massive.
Yeah, based solely on their presence. Any creature within its radius must make a saving throw, and if it fails, it becomes frightened, which means that the creature has disadvantage on all of its attack rolls and ability checks, as long as it can see the dragon, and it cannot move any closer to the dragon. So it pretty much stops you right in place.
Oh yeah, I can just imagine party going in, you got a party member who's already a little nervous about fighting a dragon, and then right off the bat, he's like, oh no, that thing's huge.
Exactly. Now, the good thing about the frightful presence is that if you do succeed against it, then you are immune to that dragon's frightful presence for 24 hours.
Okay, very good.
Something else that happens when a dragon becomes legendary, when it becomes an adult, when it gains these legendary resistances and legendary actions, it also gains access to a lair and lair actions.
This is where stuff gets really kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, these lairs are wherever the dragon chooses to live, and the area around the dragon's home has become so infused with the magic that is part of the dragon that the area it lives in takes on properties akin to the creature. Now, for red dragons, this means that the surrounding area is ravaged by earthquakes, water becomes sulfuric, and portals to the elemental plane of fire open up. And if you fight a red dragon in its lair, I don't know why you ever would, but if you think that's your best plan, and you go for it, these dragons can summon magma eruptions, earth tremors, and volcanic gases to protect them.
It's funny you say that, because I think it is important to note here that if you choose to go up against an ancient red dragon in its lair, you're not just going up against the red dragon, you're really kind of going up against it and the lair.
Not to mention any minions it might have.
Oh, yeah. Bad plan.
Yeah, a dragon in its lair is a choice that has been made. Now, let's move on to the second most notable chromatic dragon, the blue dragon. Blue dragons are marked not only by the color of their scales, but by this large single rhino-like horn and frilled ears that they have. They are vain, territorial, manipulative, mocking. They like order and structure, and it's theorized that they probably raise their young better than any other chromatic dragon.
Interesting.
Unlike the red dragons who like to live in hot volcanoes and lava tubes and stuff like that, blue dragons prefer to live in deserts, burrowing beneath sands and just waiting to trap creatures in their jaws.
Mm.
Blue dragons covet gems and sapphires most of all. They excel at aerial combat, and they have a powerful lightning breath that they use to take out enemies. They're also known to have an aptitude for magic.
Oh.
Now, as a wormling, a blue dragon has a lightning breath weapon that it can shoot in a 5-foot wide by 30-foot line. As they age up and they get all the way to an ancient dragon, it becomes a 10-foot wide by 120-foot line that deals 16d10 lightning damage.
That's got some reach to it, and that's a heavy hit.
Yeah. They can just waylay to an entire column of soldiers, smash through city walls with their breath. It's intense.
Spread out. That's my advice.
Now, where a blue dragon makes its home, lightning storms will rage the territory. Dust devils will scour the landscape. They build their lairs as warrens deep into the sand, and they burrow into barren places, and they line it with sinkholes as a line of first defense. But they always build in the ability to collapse tunnels in order to either trap invaders or cut off their retreat.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty scary too. If you decide the dragon's too much and you got to get out of there, well, that may not be an option.
One of their first bit of lair actions includes collapsing ceilings, creating sand clouds, and they can even generate random arcs of lightning to shoot out at you.
Oh my. That would end a lot of adventuring parties right there, I think, just getting through the lair.
Oh, absolutely. Not to be messed about, these dragon lairs. But let's move on next to the green dragons. They are thinner, they're more lithe than their other wormkin. They have these large crests that run down their spine from about their eyes all the way to the tip of their tails. They are cunning and duplicitous, and perhaps the most intelligent of dragons. They live for misdirection and trickery and use it to gain any advantage they can, and as such, they place the most value in sentient creatures that they can warp and bend to their own will. They value subservient bards, heroes, and sages just as highly as they do emeralds, wood carvings, and sculptures.
I could see that. I did read somewhere that the green dragon was probably more likely to kind of play mind games with you than it would be to just outright kill you, because of sort of sick enjoyment of that.
Yeah, they always want to get every bit they can out of it. They want to manipulate every bit of the world possible. That's what they do. Now, they like to live in deep forests. Sometimes they actually compete for territory with either black or white dragons.
Okay.
But since greens tend to be more powerful, they often get the upper hand. Their lairs are often these multi-cave warrens, which are accessible via either a sheer cliff, or they use entrances hidden behind waterfalls or beneath lakes. And instead of fire or lightning, they expel a poison breath, and they often like to learn magic as they grow up, preferring to attack at first with magic from afar instead of getting right into it. When they become an ancient dragon, this poison breath of theirs increases to a 90-foot cone and deals 22 d6 poison damage.
Yeah, there we go. That's starting to get up there.
Green dragon lairs themselves often have massive thickets that seem to appear and allow the dragon to come and go without leaving a trace.
Ooh.
And the dragon can even use birds and other small rodents to listen and spy upon approaching foes.
This kind of sounds like a druid's archenemy almost.
A lot of them actually are, yeah. Druids tend not to like these creatures. But while deep within their lair, green dragons can summon grasping roots and vines, bristling needle-like thorns, and use a magical obscuring fog.
These guys do sound pretty formidable, especially to have that level of intellect and, I guess, proclivity for magic.
Yeah, green dragons are all about getting that smart advantage, because they know they're not the most powerful of dragons, but they make up for it with pure cleverness.
They're doing that big brain move.
Yeah. Stepping down another notch, we're going to get to the black dragons. Now, black dragons are evil, vile, brutal, cruel, sadistic creatures. They are the ones who like to play with their food.
Ooh.
And they are marked by these long curved horns that curve out from the side of their head down towards their jaws. And their skin and scales sink in, creating an almost skeletal-like visage.
Yeah, these guys are pretty scary. You should look them up if you're listening, because they look terrifying.
And they hate other dragons. They spy and look out for opportunities to slay weaker opponents, and will always avoid stronger ones. They make their lairs, kind of appropriately, in swamps. They love muck, mire, and decay. They revel in sunken grottos, swamp ruins, anywhere where these scents of death and decay linger. They value fearful subservience, often claiming entire villages of lizard folk as their followers. And they love raiding settlements for treasure and food as tribute. They feel they should be worshipped because they are true dragons.
They got an ego like the red dragons.
Yeah, but not the power to back it up. Not that they're not powerful, but relatively speaking.
Yeah.
And as an ancient dragon, they can expel a line of acid that is 10 foot by 90 foot and deals 15d8 acid damage.
Acid damage also just sounds scary. I know it's mechanically similar to poison, perhaps, but I don't know. It's very fitting, flavor-wise, I guess, for the black dragon.
Yeah, absolutely. Their swamp layers create difficult terrain for miles, fouling any water source, and generate a low-rolling fog that suffuses the entire bog and mire so you can't really see where you're going. When battling in their lair, black dragons can cause pools of water to rise up and knock down their enemies, summon swarms of insects, and create magical darkness to blind their prey, which comes in handy because dragons also have blind sight.
Oh, man.
So they don't need light to see you. They know you're there within a certain radius.
That's pretty scary, especially if you can't see them.
Yeah, exactly. Now that brings us to the quote-unquote weakest of the chromatic dragons, the white dragons. They may be viewed as weak by their kin, but they are the best hunters of all dragon kind.
Ah, okay.
They are the most instinctual, bestial. They may lack the cunning and the tactics of most dragons, but they have amazing memories. They relish the thrill of the fight, the hunt, and the kill. They hate having any kind of rival near their lair, and they prefer to live in frigid Arctic environments, where they can burrow through ice and snow, soar in storms, and sleep upon icebergs. Sort of appropriately, they are gifted with cold breath.
Yeah.
When they age up all the way to an ancient dragon, it becomes a 90-foot cone that deals 16d8 cold damage. But they don't just use their cold breath to hunt.
Oh?
No, they freeze their food and eat it frozen.
Oh, no.
And they freeze their treasures in blocks of ice, so that it glitters like stars.
Oh, I guess it would be kind of pretty to stumble upon a white dragon's hoard, before he freezes you to death.
Yeah. And they can remember every single coin that they've ever taken in victory. They keep trophies. If they've defeated a ship, they might keep the mast or the figurehead. They might keep the head of a creature encased in ice.
Ooh, interesting.
And every gem and every coin, they remember the story behind it, and they thrive on those memories. Now, a white dragon's lair causes a chill fog to cover the entire landscape. Hail, snow, frozen precipitation are pretty much constant. And magical icy walls kind of form up in order to protect the dragon's home. A white dragon in its lair can summon this freezing fog or walls of ice or cause jagged shards of icicles to fall upon their prey. They are no joke.
No, especially if you're not a fan of the cold.
Yeah, especially then. So that's a quick rundown on the chromatic dragons. Nothing too crazy to go on, right?
Yeah, I'm ready to fight my dragons now that I know all that.
Yeah, pick up your sword, head on out. Go for it, kid. What could you lose?
The whole party.
Yeah. One fun little thing we like to do here on Mid-Level Adventures is go to our tavern corner and talk about what we are imbibing tonight. So, Matt, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, tonight, as promised a couple of episodes ago, I think, I am drinking a lager.
Ooh, nice.
But it's not just any lager.
Okay.
Because you knew it couldn't be, right? It's a coffee lager. And I lost them.
Why? Why would you do this to me?
Honestly, it sounded perfect when I saw it. It is from, let me see if I can find the brewery. Here we go. Steel Hands Brewery in KC. I think that's how you pronounce it. KC, South Carolina, just south of Columbia. And I don't normally pick up lagers unless something kind of stands out about them to me. And I like coffee. So I had to try it. And I like it a lot. I mean, I don't know, when you have a craving for that coffee beer, but you don't want something super heavy. Maybe, it's a little warmer outside or whatnot. This is the perfect answer for that. It's the best of both worlds.
Okay.
I've been a big fan.
All right. Well, as long as you like it, that's what matters. Can't believe you ruined a perfectly good lager, though.
Oh, no. I'm so happy that they improved a perfectly good lager.
Agree to disagree, but that's okay, as long as you're having fun with it.
Well, so what are you having tonight? Not a lager, I'm guessing?
No, so tonight I'm actually having another cider.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, a little refreshing kind of change of pace. I am drinking Citizen Cider's The Dirty Mare.
Dirty Mare, okay.
Yeah, The Dirty Mare. This is their ginger-infused cider. Brewed and bottled, or well, canned, I suppose, in Burlington, Vermont.
Okay.
It is really good. It's got a good amount of ginger that you can really taste. It is tart. It is spicy. It's very complementary flavor to the apples. I don't know if they're using like a tartar apple or what, but it's a good amount of ginger and burn. It's not too dry. It's not really sweet. It's kind of that really good middle ground that I personally really like ciders to be in, especially with that little bit of spice tickle from the ginger at the back of the throat.
Yeah. I never actually would have considered ginger in a cider, but, now that you describe it, it does sound like it makes some sense.
It definitely complements it very well. I would highly recommend it, actually, especially if you are a fan of any kind of carbonated ginger beer, like a Stewart's or something.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like ginger ale, but like a true ginger beer.
Right.
But yeah, I enjoy it a lot. I think it's really good.
Well, cheers.
Cheers. And that's what we're imbibing tonight. But since we have talked about our illustrious chromatic friends, let's move now to the metallic dragons. Metallic dragons, as we said, are very similar to their chromatic counterparts, with the major exception being that they are generally good, and that they have a second breath weapon.
Yeah, that's very cool.
As I said earlier, metallic dragons have a damaging breath option and a neutralizing breath option. However, ancient metallic dragons are also capable shape changers. They can morph into humanoids at will, something their chromatic counterparts cannot do without the aid of external magic.
That is a pretty cool little feature. And I want to say that some of these dragons choose to spend a lot of their time as humanoid.
Yes, some of them do actually really enjoy spending time with humanoids.
So be nice to that weirdo at the end of the bar. He could really be a dragon.
Yeah. Let's start off with the brass dragons. They love sunlight and they crave conversation. They thrive in hot, dry climates and are noted for a unique appearance. Their wings extend wide instead of swept back. They are sailed and connect all the way down along the sides of their body to the tip of their tail, forming more of a triangle shape than the open, wide, spread eagle wings that we may be used to.
Yeah, they do have kind of a nice silhouette, don't they?
They do, yeah. And their love of conversation extends to the items they covet. They love intelligent magical items, or a lamp with a genie bound to it. And they like to hide their treasure buried in sand far from its lair. So be careful if you come across some treasure just randomly in a sand dune. Might belong to a brass dragon.
Yeah, that's good to remember. Be careful what you pick up.
Yeah. Now, brass dragons can breathe a line of searing fire or use a sleep breath.
You did call these neutralizing breaths earlier. It seems that they are perhaps for the purpose of maybe avoiding a fight or deterring a fight, be my guess?
Absolutely. That is exactly right. As an ancient brass dragon, the fire breath increases to a 90 by 10 foot line, dealing 16d6 damage, and the sleep breath can now increase to a 90 foot cone, so a dragon can put a whole army to sleep by itself.
Oh yeah, and then boop, fly away.
Yep, exactly. The area surrounding their lair causes tracks to appear. These tracks always lead to water and shelter, but they always lead away from the lair itself.
Okay.
Illusions pop up everywhere, and the dragon is able to determine the location of anyone who happens to be near a water source within its territory.
Oh, well.
If forced to do battle in their lair, a brass dragon can summon either wind or sand to aid it in battle, calling up windstorms and sandstorms.
That sounds like Adis would be a huge fan.
Adis would love it. Now let's move on to bronze dragons, who may sound like they are somewhat similar to the brass dragon, But the bronze dragon prefers to live along the coastline. They love coastal caves, and they spend hours watching ships. They've even been known to negotiate with a captain if they can sense that a particular ship has a particularly valuable item within its hold.
Can you imagine a dragon like flying up to your ship to negotiate? I think it would just be like, whatever you want, sir, or ma'am.
Yeah, exactly. You want it? Yeah.
Yeah, you can have it. It's all yours.
But they do negotiate for what they feel to be a fair price.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they aren't bullies. They just like valuable things. Bronze dragons obviously are a bit social, and they are known to join in conflicts that may erupt in and around their home area. But they always investigate beforehand to determine who fights on the side of good.
Okay.
And as such, they will aid them as a staunch ally, for a fee, of course.
Okay.
They do oppose tyranny in all forms, but they got a horde to maintain, so
They're still dragons, yeah.
Yeah. Pony up those treasures, people here.
Exactly.
Give them up. They love bright coral, pearls, and sunken treasures. They've even been known to take sunken hulls from the depths of the ocean and convert them into a nest within their caves.
I like that a lot. I really, they're one of my favorites, I think. I like the seaside flavor, the nautical flavor. And they're kind of pretty, actually. They've got this sort of almost, it probably changes as they age, but kind of a greeny tint to their bronziness.
Oh yeah, that should be noted that all dragons go through a slight color shift as they age, becoming more of a true version of the color of their respective species.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Bronze dragons, they have a lightning breath and a repulsion breath.
Oh, interesting.
When they become an ancient dragon, these breath weapons increase just like all the others, the lightning damage becoming a 120 by 10 foot line, dealing 16 d10 lightning damage, and a 30-foot cone of repulsion breath that can push a creature up to 60 feet away.
Wow.
So if it uses its breath, you can become, instead of 30 feet away and, I'm within range of something, poof, you're suddenly another 60 feet away. You're 90 feet away from the dragon now.
I imagine it just ragdolls you away. I'm not going to lie, the first thought I have now is Skyrim with the Fusro Da! Just flinging people away.
Yeah, totally. Now, as an ancient bronze dragon settles into its lair, it can alter the weather around its home once per day. All underwater plants in the area become vibrant and beautiful, and there may be soft echoing notes or sounds or music within the lair itself. If doing battle inside of the lair, a bronze dragon can summon fog or produce deafening thunder to deadly effect.
Yeah, just thinking about that, being deafened to death.
Yeah, thunder damage is no joke. Moving on, we have the copper dragons. Now, copper dragons, you gotta love them. They are the pranksters of the dragon community. They're tricksters. They love a good joke. Yet they can also be quite covetous and miserly about their hoards. They are even-tempered. They're gregarious. They appreciate wit, humor, stories, and riddles. One thing they do not appreciate is when someone doesn't laugh at their jokes.
Ooh, that's good to remember.
They like to tell jokes, they like to pull pranks, which are always meant to be amusing and not hurtful or cruel. But, dragon humor, who can account for it?
Well, yeah.
Copper dragons love metals, precious stones, both worked and in their raw form in the raw element. They too build their homes in caves, and they like constructing complex and elaborate labyrinths as an amusement, and they will actually compete with one another to see who can create the more interesting lair.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Copper dragons have an acid breath. They also have a slowing breath, which causes any creature to lose any reactions, have their speed, and restrict their abilities in combat if they fail to save against it. Much akin to the slow spell.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Now, when a copper dragon becomes ancient, that acid breath is now a 10 foot by 90 line, and it deals 14d8 acid damage, and their slowing breath can affect creatures in a 90-foot cone.
Oh, well, pretty big range.
Yeah, they just are like, this is getting a little much, let's all simmer down now.
Keep calm.
Talk about battlefield control, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, the region around a copper dragon's lair can develop magical carvings that depict the dragon's face or visage. Some small beasts in the area will gain the ability to speak and will always talk up the dragon, extolling its virtues.
Insert eye roll here.
And any intelligent creature becomes automatically prone to fits of the giggles.
That's fun. This really is a fun dragon, to be honest.
Right, they're the life of the party.
Still able to defend themselves.
Oh yes, especially in their lairs. Inside of their lair, a copper dragon can cause earthen spikes to erupt, or the ground itself to turn into deep mud to try to trap their foes. They may like a good joke, but they are not to be trifled with.
This is what happens when you don't laugh at the copper dragon.
Yeah, they could get offended. Now moving on, we come to the arguably most powerful of the dragons, the gold dragon. Now gold dragons are interesting because the gold dragon is actually based specifically on the dragons of Chinese mythology.
Yeah, I can see that.
And as such, they were the first good dragon to be introduced to the game in the white box in 1974.
Oh, wow.
They are utterly committed to rooting out evil, and they spend much of their later lives in humanoid form, searching out, tracking down evil cults, evil villains, getting rid of them. They are dedicated to preserving good. As such, they are respected for their wisdom and their fairness, but they can often be aloof and very grim. They take responsibility seriously.
Yeah.
They have these flexible spines on their face that resemble whiskers, and horns that sweep back over their brow, and large, sail-like wings that sprout from their shoulders and trail down to the tip of their tails that when they fly, create a rippling motion.
Very elegant.
Much so. They tend to make their homes in out-of-the-way, secret, idyllic places, such as hidden lakes or mist-shrouded islands or long ancient ruins. Places where they can create a well-guarded vault deep within their lair, placing magical wards all around it that make it practically impossible to remove anything without the dragon knowing. Now, one fun thing about the gold dragons is while they value all treasures, they prefer to eat pearls and gemstones.
Interesting.
Yeah, they can eat whatever they want, but their meal of choice, pearls and gemstones.
That's a strange diet.
Yeah. Now, they might value such a gift, and really any gift of value to a dragon is a smart move, right?
Yeah, I'd say.
However, you gotta be careful. Gold dragons do not appreciate bribery.
I have to say, they also don't sound like they would be a cheap date with that sort of appetite. So
Yeah, probably not. As they grow up to become an ancient gold dragon, they can emit a 90-foot cone dealing 13d10 fire damage, or they can emit a weakening breath that drains the strength from their enemies in a 90-foot cone. So the strongest armies become weak and immobile in the breath of a gold dragon.
Not on my list of things I want to fight.
Yeah, I would advise against it. The area surrounding the lair of a gold dragon has a few interesting benefits. For the first, the gold dragon can mentally converse with any sleeping or trancing creature, provided it can speak, within a certain radius of its lair. It can just hop in and chat to you in your dreams.
Whoa, that's cool. Trippy.
Yeah, the area around the lair generates these beautiful opalescent mists, and gems and pearls emit bright light with a 5-foot radius. So any gems or pearls that you may be carrying become little mini flashlights.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and if you somehow, for some reason, corner a gold dragon in its lair, the gold dragon can use its lair action to see into the future, essentially giving itself advantage on everything, or to banish creatures to a dream plane for a while.
Yeah, don't fight them. Bad idea.
Yeah, gold dragons, they got it sewn up.
I guess you wouldn't really, hopefully, have a reason to unless you were maybe playing an evil campaign or character.
Who knows, right? But again, in Eberron, dragons are not dependent on their alignment type.
Oh yeah, you're right, yeah.
Now that we've talked about the shining gold dragons, let's come on down to, I think, my favorite metallic dragon, the silver dragon.
Yeah.
Now, silver dragons are the friendliest of all the dragons. They love being social. They help others out solely because they believe in assisting good creatures in need. They believe that living a moral life is about doing good deeds and preventing undeserved harm to sentient creatures. They don't hunt out and seek evil like the gold dragons do, but they will gladly oppose and fight against evil creatures who may be harming the innocent in their immediate vicinity.
That's still nice.
Oh yeah, they're really nice. In fact, so much so that they often make friends with mortal humanoids, becoming fascinated with these shorter-lived creatures, especially humans, with their short-lived zest for life. And they are often known to assume a humanoid form and spend a significant amount of time with them.
Ah, okay.
As avid lovers of humanoid society, they prize relics of their history. Minted coins from fallen empires, objets d'art, jewelry, thrones of rulers, monoliths from fallen cities, all of these kinds of things are what silver dragons love to have in their hoard.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, silver dragons have a cold breath and a paralyzing breath, where if a creature fails, it stops moving and becomes paralyzed.
Frozen in place, you might say?
Exactly so. As an ancient silver dragon, the cold breath can affect a 90-foot cone, and it deals 15d8 damage, and the paralyzing breath can stop everyone within a 90-foot cone within their tracks.
It's pretty powerful. And they look powerful too, don't they? I mean, they just look very regal and...
Yeah, it's the mohawk.
It's the mohawk, yeah. And that strong jaw.
Yeah, because silver dragons have that big frilled mohawk and that big kind of strong lower jaw.
Yeah. Yeah, they're probably one of the most, if not the most, regal looking.
Oh, absolutely. A silver dragon's lair allows the dragon to alter the weather around the area once per day if it desires to, and any winds that are around will swirl in order to prevent non-evil creatures from taking falling damage.
Oh, that's very nice too.
Yeah. And if they have enough time, a silver dragon can cause the fog and the clouds in its home to assume shapes, and slowly those clouds and fogs become stone, turning into massive structures. They're like the long view architects of the dragons.
That's really awesome. It's impressive too.
Yeah, it is. If they, for whatever reason, must fight within their lair, they can call upon a blinding fog or a blistering cold in order to assist them.
I got a feeling, much like, well, many of these dragons, but they should also not be on the top of your list, perhaps, of things to go out and fight.
Yeah, probably not.
And they sound so friendly. Why would you fight one anyway?
I know, they're adorable, right? Should hang out with them. Have a six-pack.
Oh, yeah, coldest spear in all of the land.
That's true. That's a good point. Now, I know earlier we said that there are two types of true dragons, metallic and chromatic, and that is true. However, in earlier editions of the game, there are also gem dragons.
Oh, interesting.
Now, these gemstone dragons haven't really shown up much in 5th edition until fairly recently, but let's talk about them a little bit real quick here. The gem dragons are all governed over by the sole ruby dragon named Cerador, and there are 5 different types of gem dragons: amethyst, crystal, emerald, sapphire, and topaz.
Okay.
The only one in 5e so far has been the sapphire dragon.
Is this the one that lives in the Underdark?
It is, yes.
Ooh, that sounds like a bad guy.
Yeah, now the thing about gem dragons is that they are psionic in nature. Every edition where they've been in, they've had mental abilities, and the 5e sapphire dragon is no different. It does live exclusively in the Underdark, in massive caves and tunnel networks. It can climb, it can fly, it can burrow, and it can innately cast scrying, telekinesis, or teleportation circle once per day. Sapphire dragons are dangerous, warlike, and territorial. They collect magical weapons and magical armor, hiding them away in underground caverns. And they emit a debilitating breath, a high-pitched tone of sound that does thunder damage and causes creatures to become incapacitated.
Yeah, that sounds pretty scary too. That combined with their telekinetic powers, huh?
Yeah, they can use their legendary actions to fling a creature with telekinesis, or they can do a short-range teleport.
Teleporting dragon is kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, it just bounces around wherever it wants.
Hey, it was just over there.
Now he's behind us. Crap, run! Ah, there he is again! Now their lairs themselves attract giant spiders, and natural stones within the lair will grow plentiful crystals. And these crystals can actually be used by the dragon to see through and spy on creatures within its realm.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. And if doing battle within its lair, a sapphire dragon can use a lair action to charm a creature, reshape stone, or even generate a blocking wall of stone.
Be hard to get to those hidden away magical items, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, I would not be surprised if they block up walls of stone just to hide their little caches of loot.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of covers the true dragons of D&D. What other creatures are dragons? Because there's got to be more. There's a whole subset of creature type, and we've kind of mentioned a few already.
Yeah, there's not many that I know about, but I think there are quite a few, and I am a little familiar with, they're under the category at least of lesser dragons. And I think if I've got that right, for instance, drakes, I think we came up against a couple of those in Newly Forged.
Correct.
And if I remember correctly, right, they're wingless, they're large, dog-sized or bigger.
Yep.
I'm also sort of aware, I should say, of something called a pseudo-dragon.
Yes.
Which they would be the smallest, right?
Yeah, pseudo-dragons are like cat-sized.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's a good... I was about to say like small dog, but cat. Yeah. And, they sound pretty interesting. I believe they are kind of a favorite of spellcasters, right? To use as pets or...
Yeah, they will use a pseudo-dragon as a familiar if they can.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But there's more. I mean, there's quite a few more, probably.
Yeah, these pseudo-dragons are especially fun because if a spellcaster can use them as a familiar, they gain access to not only a cool little dragon, which is kind of a status mark, but pseudo-dragons have telepathy and poisonous stings.
Yeah, well, that telepathy is pretty cool too.
There's also fairy dragons. Fairy dragons are these tiny little invisible trickster dragons with these kind of good hearts and friendly keen minds whose color changes as they age. As you said, drakes are these wingless predators. There's theories about how they came to be. Some people think that they are formed from the scales of true dragons via a ritual.
Okay.
There are also shadow dragons, which are dragons that have been corrupted by the magics of the Shadowfell. There are draco-liches.
Oh.
Yeah, which are undead dragons that have undergone the rituals of lichdom to escape death and gain power.
Yeah, that's frightening.
Now, technically, those are not dragons anymore. They qualify as undead. But we're going to let it count because Draco-Lich is in charge, baby. Whatever they say goes.
Hey, they were still dragons at one point.
Now, there are also wyverns.
Wyverns.
Yeah, which are poisonous sky predators that hunt whatever and whenever they want.
That's what I was trying to think of, wyverns, yeah. I think I heard you mention something called a dragon turtle?
Oh, yes, dragon turtles. They are massive sea-bound dragons that live deep within oceans or bays and demand tribute from passing ships. And they are large enough where they could swallow small ships, like in a single bite, no problem. And they emit a steam breath, which they can use to burn their enemies, even underwater.
Oh, that's terrifying, but also really cool. Maybe I'm a little biased, given who I'm playing in Newly Forged, but that sounds really awesome. I don't have to do some research on those now.
Yeah, they are incredibly interesting creatures and can become very dangerous. I mean, they're dangerous because they're dragons. So these are the lesser dragons, quote unquote. Still dangerous, some cute, some very deadly, but not true dragons. But these lesser dragons, they bring up a couple questions, don't they? Now, there are a few humanoid species which look kind of dragon-like, aren't there?
That's right. The first one that many people probably know of would be kobolds.
Yeah, the kobolds. And following shortly after that, the dragonborn.
One of my personal favorites.
Understandable, as the kobold is mine. So this is a good chance to talk about it a little bit. But how do kobolds and dragonborn relate to dragons?
Well, I guess I'll start off talking about the Dragonborn, right? So, similar to the dragons, there are kind of a few different origin stories depending on, well, I guess it's setting dependent. I think, again, a lot of it may be sort of intentionally vague or wrapped in myth, but some of the legends of Aegir, they tell that Io, which you mentioned earlier, the first and greatest of the dragon gods, created the Dragonborn as servants for the first dragons. And in several of the other stories, I think depending on the exact origins, I think the Dragonborn were often slaves or servants to true dragons. I mean, again, it kind of varies, but they've sort of updated the origin story, haven't they, to explain how they exist in the world of 5e, is that right?
Yeah, the reason being because originally in 3.5, when the Dragonborn were introduced, it was a race that you turned into. Like, you started your career, your life, as a human, as a dwarf, as a halfling.
Right.
But if you were called to Bahamut's eternal campaign against evil dragonkin, you could undergo a ritual and turn into a Dragonborn as we know them.
Ah, very cool.
In 4th edition, when Wizards of the Coast decided to abandon the Forgotten Realms as their main campaign setting and use the sister world of Aegir instead of Toril, they just decided to make the Dragonborn a race. No longer a ritual you had to undergo, you could have always been a Dragonborn. You were hatched.
Right.
And that is where the history of Dragonborn as either oppressed slaves or champions of dragonkind kind of started popping up in various places. Now, when 5th edition rolled around and Wizards of the Coast decided to go back to the Forgotten Realms, back to Toril, they couldn't just abandon the Dragonborn. They now had to incorporate a very popular player option into a world where it did not exist previously. So how do they do this, you might be asking yourselves at home? Well, let me tell you how. They said, hey, we'll blame the Spell Plague, because why not?
Right.
The Spell Plague was a cataclysmic event in the history of the Forgotten Realms, and they decided that essentially what happened is the Spell Plague opened up a portal and transported a large population of Dragonborn to Toril from the twin planet Abeir.
Mm-hmm.
And when those Dragonborn showed up, a lot of them were very anti-dragon, and they were constantly under threat from them, and so those feelings carried over to Toril. So it doesn't matter if it's a gold dragon or a red dragon. If it's a dragon, chances are a Dragonborn of Toril not going to like it.
Yeah.
Of course, that's also cultural, so if you're playing a Dragonborn that has a different view on the world, that's also fine.
Yeah, like many things, there are exceptions, right? Depending on specific backstory, etc.
Absolutely. As you can see, Dragonborn, very complicated in their relationship with dragons. Now let's chat about kobolds, some of my personal favorites, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kobolds tend to idolize and worship chromatic dragons. They believe that dragons are demigods and thereby divine, and as such they will often offer themselves in service to these chromatic wormkin, and they will go to great lengths to fulfill any orders given to them by their draconic masters. They believe that they were created by Tiamat herself, from the blood of some of the first true dragons. Yet they don't worship her directly, but instead their own god named Kurtulmak, who is in turn a servant of Tiamat herself. Kobolds are very proud that they are bloodkin of dragons, and they believe that there is great strength within themselves because of it, even though they tend to prefer stealth and guile and retreating and running away to full-on beat-em-up kind of tactics.
Right.
Unfortunately for these poor little kobolds, they are indeed humanoids and not dragons.
But they want to be so much.
They absolutely do.
So adorable.
They are adorably misguided, and it's endearing, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't want to be a part of something greater or claim kinship to some great, impressive thing or being? Now, wrapping up here, I think we can all agree that dragons are arguably the most iconic creature in all of human folklore, and in D&D. Majestic, powerful, intelligent, dragons have been the epicenter of countless D&D campaigns and encounters. Matt Mercer famously used a conclave of 5 chromatic dragons as antagonists over an entire arc of Critical Role. Brennan Lee Mulligan used one in Season 1 of Dimension 20's Fantasy High. Dragons have permeated the human psyche for as long as we can remember. Every culture has their own form of dragons. Some are evil and cruel, some are kind and wise, some are beneficent, some are miserly. Dungeons & Dragons uses them all as an inspiration to create what I believe to be a very cohesive idea of dragon.
Yeah.
I admit that dragons are my favorite creatures. If you want to feel powerful and mighty and heroic, you can't go wrong with defeating a vicious red dragon. And if you want to feel inspired, a conversation with a metallic dragon sage will certainly do the trick. Now, whether you're a DM or a player, dragons scratch that perfect itch for pure fantasy.
Couldn't say it better, honestly, and hopefully we've scratched the surface of a lot of what is out there on dragons, so hopefully we've just inspired you to go out and do a little more research yourself if something sounded interesting.
Yeah, here's hoping. Well, thank you to everyone who joined us for this adventure into dragon lore. Please come back and join us on our next episode, where we will be beginning an ongoing series that we are calling Interpreting Raw, or Rules as Written. We will be beginning this series with a discussion on character skills, so make sure to come back and learn how to make the most out of your skills for your D&D game. Remember to check out our friend and the composer of all the music used here on Mid-Level Adventurers, John D. Ivy, on SoundCloud.com. And make sure to follow us on Facebook at Mid-Level Adventurers, and on Twitter and Instagram at MidLVLAdventure.
And please check out our website on Wix at midleveladventurer.wixsite.com, and feel free to email us at midleveladventurers@gmail.com. And watch Jarrod and I on Newly Forged, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/newlyforged. You can catch up on previous episodes of Newly Forged on our YouTube channel, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's NUULIFORGED.
And as always, I'm Jarrod Jehoda.
And I'm Matt Morris.
Until then, mind the traps and keep adventuring.